name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Destroyer40. Our special guest tonight is singer-guitarist Pat Gasperini from the band 4 by Fate. How you doing tonight, Pat?
I'm doing great, Jason. Pleasure to be here, man. How are you?
Great. Now, of course, my reason for wanting to talk to you is I want to talk to you a little bit about your new band, 4 by Fate. But before we get into that, we've been talking to people that either got some kind of Kiss connection or were influenced by Kiss. So before we get into 4 by Fate, I was curious, were you at all a Kiss fan growing up?
Yeah, I was about 8 years old when the story came out.
Wow. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. I remember it clear as day, man. Detroit Rock City, shout it out loud, changed my life,
Yeah. Now, let me ask you, was it a matter of just hearing a song on the radio? Did you see the album in a store?
I actually saw the album, and I was at a family friend's house, and with my mom and dad, and he had the record at first.
Wow.
And wow, this is awesome. What is, it was just hearing about, I'm a little kid, right?
Yeah.
So started to hear about it, and then I saw it, and I was just so intrigued by it. I had to run out, Mom, give me this record, blah, 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 so on and so forth, and there it was.
Yeah, and when you're 8 years old and you see a picture that looks like, the guys, on that album cover, they look like superheroes, cartoon characters. You just know, and then you find out, oh wait a minute, they're a rock band, and you put on the record, and they got great rock songs here. It's really the whole package.
Yeah, totally. I was like, wow. I thought exactly that. I think Comet. What are they? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And exactly how I felt about it, and I still remember exactly sitting at the table.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it clear as day. That's not all I remember, but I remember sitting at the kitchen table looking at this record right here.
Yeah, and how much?
Being put the phone away,
Yeah, and how much did their look, the image, the makeup have to do with you becoming a fan as much of the music did?
Well, it kind of pulled me in, but listening to, I'm a song guy,
Yeah.
So when I started hearing the songs and the record, I'm like, wow, this is some good stuff here. So I was pulled in immediately,
Yeah.
So I have to say it's a combination of both. It's definitely a both. The costumes intrigued me to be more, amped up and excited about hearing what it was. At that point, when you're 8 years old, it's like, wow, what is this,
Yeah, and
being kind of blown away because, back then it was like, all analog records and tape is rolling and...
cassettes, and let's not forget 8-tracks even. Back in the...
That's right. So it was a great time, and it made a big impact on me musically for sure.
And now, was Destroyer your first kind of introduction to Kiss, or had you heard any Kiss music prior to that?
I probably have heard it. I grew up. At 5, 6 years old, I was playing a lot of gospel and a lot of believe it or not, a lot of Elvis Presley. A lot of songs running around the house. I started playing at a young age, so I kind of heard a little bit of that, but all you had back then was radio and TV and record players, right?
Yeah. Players? Oh, record players. Yeah. I'm about the same age as you, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. In fact, I'm one of these old school guys. I still like, probably like you, Pat. I still like to hold a physical, copy of the CD in my hand. I like to have something to look at, something to, read the liner notes and the artwork. That's kind of, very much like Kiss. I like the whole package, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. I'm a fan of it. Yeah, I've always been a fan of opening up an album and checking out all the photos and the artwork and the lyrics and.
Yeah. You look at.
I'm still a fan of it. I open the CDs and even the downloads. I still. That's what I grew up on.
Yeah,
I'm not knocking technology, but there's just nothing like the real thing.
Yeah, but as great as technology is, my one complaint about that is, a lot of kids these days don't know what you and I are talking about, the experience of going to a record store. What is a record store these days? Everybody wants it, right here, right now. I'm not going to buy the whole album, I'm just going to buy the latest single. And because of that, a lot of bands are just, we'll just put out like a 4-song EP. Again, I miss the days of going to get a whole, entire CD. that's why, like, I got your band 4 by Fate, your debut album, and I love the fact we get 13 great songs on there. Again, it's more than just like five new tunes. You're giving us the whole package here, and that's what I dig.
Yeah, totally. And that was I kind of live by that same kind of rule. I mean, I'm not, there's been singles dropped before, and then following up. I always feel like a single or an EP should always be followed up by a full-length album.
Definitely, definitely.
It's just it's just like a real fan wants to hear it, and listeners want to listen to it.
Yeah.
And but I'm not opposed to anything, but I personally enjoy listening to a full record.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm pulled in by the lead-off single. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and and a perfect example of what we're talking about is, you look at that Destroyer album cover. All 4 guys, on the front of that, it looks so larger than life. It looked like they're, getting ready to take over the world. And
absolutely, it's exactly what they're ready to do.
Yeah, and the thing about Destroyer too, back in the day, when that album was released, a lot of the hardcore Kiss fans kind of, they didn't accept it right away because they felt it was a little too polished, a little, more commercial than what they'd done previously. But to me, it's just a great album because you got so many great songs. The songs are definitely there, and if you from top to bottom, I really think on that album, the songwriting, they really stepped it up a notch on that album.
I feel like definitely their songwriting was really starting to reach its peak with this record. Sure.
Yeah, and Bob Ezrin, the producer, he was a big reason for that. He produced all those great early Alice Cooper albums. It's the same guy there, and besides just producing it, he's listed as a songwriter on every single track. In fact, he was the one that really pushed for the song Beth because, Gene and Paul, from what I understand, they didn't want to record that because, at the time they were under the impression, Kiss doesn't do ballads. But then, Ezrin really pushed for that track, and he kind of tweaked the lyrics and helped to make it the classic that it is today. 40 years later, it's still being played on the radio.
Thank God he pushed him in that direction, man. One of the biggest songs they had.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool too because out at the time, outside of like Phil Collins or Don Henley, not a lot of drummers were singing back then, and I thought I also thought it was kind of cool that the drummer got his little opportunity to come out from behind the drums and
Absolutely, I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic. Like any band should be to shy away from doing a ballad. A great song's a great song.
Oh yeah. And see, that's what I say about Kiss. I'm a diehard Kiss fan where, I don't just love the stuff from the 70s. I love it all. To me, it's all Kiss, if you know what I mean. And people always criticize, Kiss. They say they're not great musicians. But I'll tell you what, they've got the songs. They are really great songwriters are what they are. Especially this album, Destroyer, you hold that up 40 years later, that's half the Kiss set list.
That's the time, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
And what I loved about Kiss, too, is, from the very beginning, they were a band where they didn't just have one lead singer. They had 4 guys in the band that could sing. And it was kind of like a hard rock Beatles. That made it interesting for me that when I put on the record, I don't hear the same guy singing all 10 tracks.
I think it's fantastic. I think that is another very cool thing about the band that I really enjoy. Is that they all do step up and sing, and it creates an excitement. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now I'd imagine.
I'm bored with that, man.
Yeah, I'd imagine some point in your life you've at least seen Kiss a few times. Do you remember what was the very first time you ever saw the band live? What was that experience like for you?
I've seen them multiple times. Actually, I met them when I was probably in the 80s when they were on that Kiss Anthrax tour.
Oh yeah.
Sacramento, it was the big '98 rock show.
Oh wow.
I was actually in town with another band doing some recording a record and getting ready to do some touring myself. And that was probably not the first time, but one of the best shows I've seen them do. Man, they were hot. So yeah, that sticks out, in my mind most. And then when did I see them again? When I was younger in age. What was the first time I saw them? Was it I was about 17 then. So yeah, that one was stuck out for me for sure.
And did you ever see them with the makeup on?
Oh yeah, I saw them the first reunion tour.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I saw the first reunion tour at the Garden, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, and again, Kiss is always, makeup or no makeup, they always put on a great rock show. But I tell you, the makeup thing really, it really adds something to the show. I mean, especially like you go and see Gene Simmons breathing fire and doing his thing.
Oh, are you kidding me, man? The show is unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys were brilliant. I mean, the marketing and the promotion of Kiss and his live show is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I got to tip out to those guys. I mean, they really know how to put on a party. I can't say enough about that.
Yeah, I mean, let's just admit it right here. Rock and Roll All Night. The song came out a few years before Destroyer. I say that is all-time rock and roll national anthem. I mean, what I love about that song, if you listen to the lyrics, I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. It's so simplistic.
Yeah.
It's so simplistic, but for the last 40 years, they've been ending their show with that song, and 40 years later, it still has the power to get the people up on their feet and pumping their fists in there, and it's just a great way to end the show.
Oh, absolutely, and it's another testament of a great song. A great song that'll get old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It really, a hooky, catchy tune sticks around.
Yeah, interesting thing about Bob Ezrin, the guy that produced Destroyer, besides producing all those great Alice Cooper albums, like 4 years later after he produced Destroyer, he'd go on to produce The Wall by Pink Floyd. And if you listen to The Wall and Destroyer, they're very similar in both albums. One of the things he did is he had all these great little sound effects going throughout both those albums, and it's kind of interesting that the same guy produced both these hit-making records.
Yeah, that's a great testament for him too. I mean, phenomenal ears, phenomenal songwriter. I feel like a great producer captures the essence of the band, and that's really important. So, it's the right marriage, it's the right temperature of being engaged in songwriting process, and also being able to step away and let the band be who they are, and bringing out the best in them. I think that's what a great producer does.
Yeah, and so let me ask you, Pat, because before we get into 4 by Fate, I wanted to ask you, what were you doing? What were you doing before you hooked up with 4 by Fate? Were you doing your own? Do you have your own band? Were you doing your own solo thing?
I was signed in 1940. I made it Universal in '98 with a band called Pound.
Oh, okay.
20 years doing that. A few albums in, did a lot of touring. Had some good radio success. Writing and producing for other artists, and I was doing that, and plus my solo project, the Patrick Danes Band, right up until I hooked up with the guys from 4 by Fate. So I've been in the game all my life. You know what I mean?
Oh wow! I'd like to check out some of that other stuff.
Writing, producing, playing on every level.
Wow, that's cool. Now, how did you hook up with the guys in 4 by Fate? Because before the album actually was released, I know they'd gone through a number of lineup changes. What was the point when you got involved with this project?
John Regan and I had reconnected, and over the years, we come from the same town, and as fate will have it, we connected, and I invited him up to play a track on one of my solo projects.
Oh, okay.
For my solo songs. And it was a pleasure, it was a pleasure working together, and he actually, approached me and said, this is the type of stuff that we're, doing with the 4 by Fate thing. One thing led to another, and he kind of sent the track over to Tod, and, they got their thoughts on it, and, and came back to me, and it was right at that time, just, like a year or so before my dad had passed away, so I really strapped my guitar back on, and I was getting back into the game. I had taken a little touring, but I was producing records. So I was doing a lot of that, but not my own. So, I kind of strapped my guitar back on and was getting into it heavy duty. right at the same time that, John and I had connected. And, long story short, he had gotten back to me, and, one of the tracks that are on the record, Follow Me, was the song him and I did together.
Oh, okay.
And one thing led to another, and I started, do some more writing with the band, and then was finally, asked to be in the band.
Well, that was a lot.
I was on the outside looking in for the beginning of the project, because we were working on two different things, and we just kept on, evolving together. And the next, piece of the puzzle was.
Well, that's interesting. Now, but were a lot of the tunes that are on the 4x8 CD, were a lot of his stuff already written at the point that you would come into the picture? Because I know they had previously worked with a guy named Sean Kelly from the band Helix, and he plays with Lee Aaron. Was it just it wasn't working out with him, or do you know what the story was there?
Yeah, I mean, great guys. I don't know them personally, but I had a pleasure of meeting them. All wonderful people. They had been working the first half of the record, and just due to, Sean was in Canada, and Sarah was in Florida, and just a lot of conflicting schedules and stuff like that. Kind of like, I was kind of on the outside of that internal business, but great guys, great people, great players, and
it just didn't work out for one reason or another. But for another,
whatever the reason may be, I think it was scheduling.
Yeah.
I think they both had other projects and so on and so forth, and that's the story I have on that end. And I kept on working with the band, on a song level. And, the next thing was we're doing it, on our level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I got to give you kudos, Pat, because, again, 4x8 is really like a lot of people, this is my introduction to, who you are. I'm hearing you for the first time, and I was kind of curious, like, at the point when you started working with the band, was it always the case that you were going to be doing some lead singing as well as, Tod? Because, again, like, I know you sing on Moonshine and a couple of other tunes, and I think it's a cool thing to have more than one guy singing on the record.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it's a pleasure to do it, and I'm glad to be and happy to be a part of it. And, early on, it was kind of the talking stage, but, everything kind of happened naturally, I have to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing, I know it's been, there's a lot of things that have happened to, with AJ's, Twist and his passing and all that. And
yeah.
Coming in. So, with that being said, I feel like we all had different paths in lives, but we kind of all come from the same school, so it felt very natural.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it happened. And, I couldn't be prouder of the record. It's a really great record, top to bottom. So,
yeah, and as far as you singing, I was kind of curious, like, had you let it be known to the, obviously you'd worked with John Regan before, or I was kind of thinking, did he kind of tell Tod, hey, Tod, this guy can also sing lead too, or did they just, did you let them hear some of your demos, and it was kind of more...
Yeah, I had to send the material with me singing it, so they were, very aware that I could sing.
Oh, that's great. And now there's a track on here, track 5 on the album, It's Over Now. That's kind of an old remake of an old Frehley's Comet song.
Love it.
And I was curious, had you heard any of that stuff that they had done with Ace back in the 80s?
Oh, I knew that. I was familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah, and because, the original version that they did with Frehley's Comet, I think, it's a great song, but unfortunately at the time, it didn't really get the push that it should, and I think you guys really did a great job of, paying homage to it, but also you kind of rocked it up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a phenomenal song, and it didn't get a shot to me, and it's a big song that Tod Howarth wrote, and hopefully it gets the recognition that it deserves with this album coming out. I mean, I know it came out a few months back, but we're just getting ready to work this record. So
yeah, well, this album's been out almost about a year now, because it came out last February. But that's gonna be my next question. If you guys had planned to do any shows, or because I know you've done a couple one-off shows already.
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely in the middle of working on festival dates here in the States and overseas and Australia there's a lot going on right now. So we're getting ready to put the thing out. You know, in the interim, we had a European deal that we're working with here that's just getting geared up, and then an East Coast deal. You know, a lot of the, you know, scheduling, but you know, just scheduling and stuff like that. Yes, we plan on really digging in this year. And
that's so great. And speaking about the Kiss connection that you guys obviously have you given any thought to like they have all these like you know, across the country have all these great little like Kiss fan conventions. I think you guys would be great popping up a couple of those. You know, if the opportunity ever presented itself.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're totally plugged into the, you know, the Tod and Jon, you know, are I feel like are in the Kiss family, which totally pulls 4x8 right into that family.
Yeah, you know, and I think I think you know, Pat, being the Kiss fan you are like me, that anytime you have any kind of like, let's be honest, the fans call themselves the Kiss Army. Anytime you have the slightest bit of a Kiss connection, I mean, you know, for example, you know, the fact that Tod Howarth played with Ace Frehley, you know, when he released a solo album, I went out and bought it. You know, you have the slightest Kiss connection. Oh, these are two of the guys that played with. You know, Ace Frehley, you know, you got the drummer from Skid Row on here, the drummer from, you know, Twisted Sister. Yeah, I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an honor, and across the board. With who we're connected to and the people that are in the band, and you know, we really enjoyed making the record. We really want to get out there and get some shows under our belt and bring a lot. I mean, the record's only one part of it, because when you come out and see the show, you're going to hear the album, and you're going to hear, you know, a lot of stuff, you know, from the bands that we were in, you know, from Kiss to Frehley's Comet to Skids to Cheap Trick.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you.
It's going to be a great live show. It's going to be something else. So
and you know, And you know, the cool thing about doing that too, not only do you have those, you know, Kiss and Skid Row and Cheap Trick fans, you know, as part of your fan base, but the fact that you only got one album out, it gives you more material to perform, you know, when you're on the live stage.
Absolutely, yeah. So we're looking forward to that. It's fun to play, and I hope can't wait to race the people, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And the fans have been, you know, the fans are great, man, you know, and without the fans, you know, we love making music. Well, we need to bring it to the people, and nothing makes us more excited and happier than bringing it to a full house. So we're looking forward to it.
And now, when I talked to Tod, he was telling me that you guys kind of got like a 2-album deal, and I don't know if have you started already working on the second album, or are you at the point like you?
Yeah, we're loaded with songs for the second record ready. You know, we plan on, you know, doing some touring and letting everybody hear this. I mean, there's a lot of great songs in this record, so it needs to be heard. But we'll tour this record and then jump back in and bang another one out.
Well, that's cool, and I'd imagine, you know, as great as a debut album is, the second one is going to be that much better because, you know, like with the debut album, you had all these other people that were involved from the beginning, and they left for various reasons. But on the second album, I imagine, you know, you're actually there from the, you know, beginning of the recording, as will Rob be, and it'll be more like a more of a band effort, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I just feel greatness from these guys, and I'm looking forward to it.
And it's cool to me that this album has already been out like a year. I mean, when you consider that all the guys, you know, all it took to make that debut album, I mean, they had one drummer, the original drummer, Stet Howland from Wasp. I know he was in a horrible car accident, so, you know, that's kind of why he was no longer involved. And then they got AJ Pero, and then he suffered a heart attack, and we lost him. And then they got Rob and you. So it's great that you guys are going to finally start touring by this album. People are going to hopefully get more of a chance to hear it.
Yeah, you know, because you know, there's so much behind this past couple of years to making this record, and there's a lot behind it. So we would be doing a disservice if we couldn't go out and bring it to the people.
Yeah, and I understand from Tod, that's why they titled it Relentless. All the stuff it took to, you know, make this album and finally, you know, get it out. And you know, the great thing I can tell people, you know, this is really an album that really stands on its own. I mean, yeah, you got John Regan and, you know, Tod Howarth from two of the guys from Frehley's Comet, but, you know, if you're expecting this to sound like, you know, a carbon copy of that, it's not. This is like a modern, this is, you know, what you guys are doing today. This is a modern sounding rock album. You've got great, you know, you're not living on your past necessarily, but, you know, these are great modern rock songs. These are, you know, they're songs for today, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
And you got two great cover tunes. The first one, These Times Are Hard for Lovers. I know that's a John Waite track. Do you know? Talk a little bit about the decision to cover that.
Well, John Regan played on that track. He played on that record. And,
oh, okay.
Yeah, and because he toured with John Waite, and which we're also, I'm a huge fan of. I think everybody is.
Yeah.
And we love, you know, you can go back to the Babies and stuff. But, you know, he brought it to the table, and I was like, a great song. You know what I mean? I thought of it, you know, that was all Johnny brought to the table, and, you know, I enjoyed tracking that song.
Yeah, and like a lot of people, you know, I'm a huge John Waite fan, but I'll tell you what's cool about doing a cover like this. I mean, it's not like you guys went for the obvious choice of covering, like, oh, we'll do a version of "Missing You," you know, a song that everybody's heard 500,000 times. The great thing about this is it's a great tune, but you're kind of introducing people that haven't heard this song before. Oh, that's a John Waite song. I think I'll go, you know, listen to a John Waite version or whatever. And then you also got "Rock and Roll Hoochie Coot," great Rick Derringer track. So I think you guys.
That was all Tod, you know, his production, his idea, and it was great fun to play, and phenomenal job.
Yeah, and the great thing with both these tracks, you know, "Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo," I'd say it's kind of, you guys really stay true to kind of original Rick Derringer version, but at the same time, you kind of, you know, you also made it your own, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, totally. We rocked it up, made it modern, absolutely, and it rips, man. Love fun song to play live.
And then, of course, you got two versions, but another song I really love is "Amber Waves." I like the acoustic version. I was kind of curious, have you guys given any thought, like, when you perform live, might you do like a little plug set or something like that?
Oh, yes, definitely. We play that. That's part, you know, when we're carrying, you know, more production around, not just acoustic and keyboards, it's played all the time.
Okay. And so do you think probably you guys will spend the rest of this year?
Love the song.
Yeah. Do you think you guys will spend the rest of this year like kind of touring behind the album, get out there a little more, and then we could expect maybe the follow-up album next year, 2018?
That sounds about right. You know, we'll know, you know, we're just tying up some meetings here in the next couple of weeks, and we should start, you know, pinning down some dates, and we plan on, you know, being busy most of the year.
Yeah.
Getting some dates out there and having a new record in the can probably over the holidays.
Yeah, and
that sounds about right, you know.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
And in addition to, you know, the great Frehley's Comet track you have on here, it's over now. I was curious, any chance you guys might play any of the other Frehley's Comet material they did, you know, off that first album?
Yeah. Well, there's I don't want to give the set away.
I hear you.
There's a good 4 or 5 of them in the set.
Because those, as great as those songs are, you know, those are songs that a lot of the fans are never going to ever hear, you know, unless they go to an Ace Frehley concert or something like that.
Right. Yeah, you're going to hear stuff that Ace is not even doing now on its own.
Yeah.
So you know, you'll hear some really good favorites. We're playing them.
I mean, you know, as far as being a Kiss fan, I tell you, one of my, I just love that '87 album that, you know, Jon and Tod did with them, the Frehley's Comet album, the debut one. I mean, I love the track, you know, and Tod played a big part in the track. "Calling to You," that's a great track. I also love "Rock Soldiers." And so there's some great little gems in there. I think that you guys have an opportunity to, you know, get out there to the Kiss fans and everybody else.
Oh yeah. They're definitely in there.
And so before I let you go, Pat, are you? It sounds like 4 by Fate is kind of your main project this year, but in between, are you going to be working on any of your own music?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always writing. I just finished producing and writing a record for artist Her name is Rachel Loren. She's got a song called I Hate You, climbing the charts. She's currently on the road with Jordy Arnell from TNT.
Oh, wow.
Right out, and I just finished that record. We just finished that record, and in my studio, and I'm constantly working on my own material plus 4x8 stuff. So that album's just underway, and well, I'm always busy. I'm always in the studio. If I'm not playing, I'm recording, I'm writing, I'm producing. So
you're doing something.
Yeah, I'm in it, man. I love it. You know, I really love it. So that's what's going on, and can't wait to bring out some live shows, and I hope we get close to in the neighborhood by you, so you can come out and see us.
Oh yeah, I'd love it. And if you guys give any thought, like when you're out there performing live, have you thought about maybe recording any of the shows live? Maybe for a DVD or something down the line.
Yeah, the thought process of mine, we're waiting for the right opportunity.
Yeah.
We would love to do that. We would definitely love to do that.
Yeah, and at this point, like I said, I know you got a 2-album deal at this point. Have you begun writing at all for the next album? Like, I mean, do you have songs in the can, or will you start writing, when it gets to that point?
We're always writing, so there'll never be a shortage of material.
Oh,
and I feel like with the end, they're a really great label. We're really, I feel that we'll be there even for more than 2 albums. So we're always writing. So I feel like we already have probably enough for another 2 albums. But so we're good. We're good there.
And as far as that goes, like when you're writing tunes, Pat, at this point, I was curious, how do you know if it's necessarily like a 4x8 song versus, a song that should appear on a solo album or something?
I can usually feel it, and when I send them over to Jon and Tod and stuff, they usually connect with it immediately, and or they we'll know if it's right or not. But I don't gear unless I'm hired specifically to write for a genre. That's a different story. But most of the time, it comes straight off from my heart. So
yeah,
it's really honest and it's real. So it either works for the project or it doesn't. And, more times than not, it does. So like I said, I just got finished with this other project. We have a couple more tunes we're finishing up, but
wow.
Yeah, it's really good, and so yeah, we pretty much know, and we send material back and forth to each other, and it's a constant evolving of what we like and where we want to go musically. But I feel like it happens naturally.
Yeah. And so I got to ask you, like, when you guys recorded the album, being that you're in you live in different towns and that, were y'all in the same studio, or did you kind of were you sending them your tracks back and forth?
Yeah, no. When I came into the project, the second half of it, we were all together.
Mm-hmm.
Tod, Rob, myself, we were in the studio in Westchester, and we banged it out.
That's the way to make a record, man. I mean, you do what you got to do, but I mean, when you can do it like that, that's the way to make a record, because you can tell the difference between guys kind of checking it in, and as opposed to the guys all actually being in the same room together.
Yeah. We were fortunate enough to be able to do that, and I always enjoy it. Most of us are prepared and have even the songs that were being written, they were all demoed up, and we knew what we were doing going in.
Yeah, and I got to really compliment you guys, because again, like you're saying, you got involved in this project kind of halfway through it, and the really interesting thing is knowing about what it took to get this album made and stuff, just the different problems they had, the drummers and people coming and going. It really does. I mean, it really does sound like it was recorded all at the same time. You never knew the band suffered through all those lineup changes. It really does have a cohesive sound. That's the amazing thing about this album.
Yeah, it is really amazing. Well, I have to tip my hat to to the guys that started this thing and were here steering the project, Jon and Tod, from day one, and they made it very clear and adamant that just to keep the cohesiveness for this record. Like I said, I was on the outside looking in from early on in the project, so I had a good grasp on where it was going musically and how it was going. So because I feel like I was a part of it. Even the first song that was recorded without me being there was a song that I was a part of that I had written. So I feel like I was a part of the project the whole way through.
Yeah,
I didn't feel, that, like I was disconnected from the project. I felt like I was a part of it from day one.
And how great was it, the fact that you're kind of a new guy coming into the project, and one of the very first songs they released for the album was even out, just to kind of give people a teaser, was the song Moonshine, which that's your song that you wrote.
Yes, that was fantastic,
Yeah.
Fantastic honor, and an honor to bring it to the band, and honored and proud to go out there and kick some ass and play it, man.
Yeah, and that really shows you that there really is no ego in this band. I mean, they could have made us like, this is a Tod Howarth and Jon Regan show, and we're gonna put out a song Tod does. I really love the fact that there's no ego in this band, if you know what I mean.
Not at all. I mean, we love music, and it's the music first, and it doesn't matter
who wrote it or whatever. Yeah.
We put 150% behind it, no matter what. Whatever the track is what it is.
Yeah, and being that you
we're out playing it, 4x8 playing it. It's our song, and we're playing it, and we're bringing it to you.
And I was curious, during the making of the album, once you got involved, I was curious, how comfortable did you feel in your ability to go in there and kind of, not only bring these songs to the table, but kind of go in and do your thing? I mean, did you have them like telling you, okay, Pat, this is the way we want you to sing a song, or did they kind of just let you do your thing?
No, I did my own thing.
That's cool. Very cool.
Right from day one. I'm very confident in my ability to bring it to the table, and they were too. So like I said, it was really like we kind of pick up where we left off. It was really comfortable being in the studio. I mean, I'm in the studio all the time, so I'm comfortable in the studio no matter what.
There you go.
That's my home.
And
just like the stage in my living room, and I've recorded and worked with a lot of people. So,
wow.
But I felt like it was a really family-driven thing, and I felt very comfortable, and it felt like business as usual.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing about a band like this too is you're, as far as your fan base, anytime anybody checks out the album, you're gonna get you're gonna draw a ton of new fans. But the cool thing is you also kind of got that built-in fan base from all the guys, all the fans that are aware of who Jon and Tod are from their career, their various projects over years, and then the cool thing, they got the drummer from Skid Row, they got this other guy I've never heard of, but he's a pretty good singer. He sings on Moonshine and a couple other tunes, and you have to check out what he's about. And so you kind of got a built-in fan base, which is a little cool. I mean, you can also build from there.
Absolutely. It's very cool, and like I said, it's been fun, and I just can't wait to get it really wrapped up and moving.
Yeah,
like I said, my prior band, moving into this band, was a little lax, a little time making other records, and looking forward to supporting this one and making another couple.
Yeah, and this debut album you guys put out, it's a great blueprint for for other albums in the future. But do you think like when you go and record the next album, that it'll be kind of like just more of a progression, or you kind of stick on the same path, so to speak?
I mean, I think we all come from the same school of great songs.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Format of where we're going to go with it. We'll sit at the table and we'll listen to songs, and we'll try to assemble a record that blows this record away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I really feel like at the end of the day is a great song's a great song, and one song may be heavier, one song may be a ballad, one song may be straight up rock song. I think that's the mood point.
Yeah.
I think we're all on the same page of we're all trying to bring great songs to the table. And you know, with that work ethic in mind, you're gonna come up, you know, smelling like roses. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like, you know, a band like Def Leppard, for example. I mean, they got everything from like "Pour Some Sugar on Me" to, you know, "Hysteria," "Bringing on the Heartache."
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter if it's a, you know, slam you over the head type of song, or if it's a ballad. If it's a great song, it's a great song, and that's all that should matter in the end.
Absolutely, man. I mean, you know, sometimes ballads slam you over the head too. You know?
Yeah.
You know, we love to come out swinging, and we love to, you know, it's a very, the band is very talented, so, you know, I can't say enough about it, so I feel like everything that we bring to the table will be, you know, will be a very good offering.
Yeah, and the talent of the band, I mean, everybody, I mean, it amazes me, like Tod, for example, Tod Howarth and Jon Regan, they work so good together. It kind of amazes me. It took these guys almost 20 years to get back together and do something, and then, you know, the drummer from Skid Row, he's back out there, and then they got you. So it's just really a great musicians in the band, great pool of talent.
Yeah, top notch.
And you definitely can't go wrong.
You really can't. You know what I mean? It's really fantastic. Top notch musicians. You know.
Yeah.
Great guys, fun to be with. You know, we all love making music. And that's really, when you bring it back down to that, forget about that. And that's why we're all doing it. It's because we love music and we want to play and we want to bring the music to the people.
Yeah, and see, that's what this sounds like. If you put this record on, it doesn't sound like a bunch of guys that are doing it just, you know, of course you want to make a living, but at the same time, this is a fun record. You put it on and you tell all the, you know, all the guys in the band, they get along, you know, they hate one another. It's done from you know, just for the sake of having fun and getting some great fun rock and roll music out there.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is, man, you know? And you hit it right in the head. I mean, it comes through because that's really what it is. Yeah,
and before I let you go, I got to ask you, I know this is a hard thing probably to answer, but so many great tunes on this debut album, but is there one or two that just really knock you off that you just really love playing?
Oh, man, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. It is. I mean, even just as, you know, a guy that just loves to listen to this album you guys put out, you know, like I said, I'd say maybe my top three. I like Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. I love, just because of the Frehley's Comet connection, you know, It's Over Now. I like your song. You know, Moonshine. Those probably be my top three.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great things too. I actually love. I mean, I love playing It's Over Now. I love playing. I love playing These Times Are Hearts of Lovers. I love.
Yeah. Another great one is back in the '80s.
I love playing Let Me Breach. I love playing. You know, I love playing Moonshine. That gets me revved up.
Yeah, I also love.
I love playing it all. It's really hard for me to make that call.
I hear you, and I love Back in the '80s too. That's another great. It just kind of takes you back to the.
I mean, it's just a great album, you know.
Yeah, from top to bottom.
Down for one or two for me, but those songs I enjoy playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I
the whole record. You know, when I go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
You know, like, wow, this is really great. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I can, you know, like Judas Priest. I dare say that on this debut album, you guys delivered the goods. I mean, can't go wrong with anything on the whole entire album. You could really pick it, you know, any of these 13 tracks and put them out as a single. I think that's how good it is.
You know, I would have to agree with you.
Yeah.
It really is strong. It is. It's strong. It's strong from top to bottom.
And then the very last thing I want to ask you, you know, I'm sure like in a lot of your other bands and your solo projects that you did the bulk of the singing. So how cool is it to be in a project where you don't have to necessarily do all the singing? You got another guy to share the duties with.
Oh, it's cool. It's great. I love it. You know, I love it. I love doing it because I was, you know, before this I was doing my Patrick James band and doing all the singing and playing guitar. So it's fun. You know, it's fun. We're having fun with it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about it the most.
Yeah, and of course you're a great singer in your own right, Pat. Don't get me wrong, but I was curious. Like a lot of guys, did you kind of start singing out of necessity in the sense that you know, you were a guitar player first, and then you couldn't maybe necessarily find anybody that could sing your tunes good enough as you. So you just thought, well, I'll just kind of become a singer, because a lot of guys, that's kind of their story. They kind of fall into singing. Start out maybe as a guitar player, a bass player. They kind of fall into. What's your story as far as that goes?
Well, it's funny how that goes, because I started singing and playing.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Then I went back to, started writing and getting really into my songwriting. And then now was formed, all of us sang.
Yeah.
There was the front line, there was 3 singers in the band.
Wow.
And we did that for a long time. When we got signed, we kind of, there was a lot of pushing towards having one vocalist. So I continued my songwriting, singing, and singing all the backing vocals, and a lot of my early town stuff was a lot of 2-part vocals and a lot of harmonies. So I was really always singing. A lot of my harmony lines were lead line, and I kind of write with melody in mind.
Yeah.
So I've always sang and played, not necessarily lead singing all the time. And as time moved on, I did more and more of it, and then I got to a point where I just was, writing, recording, and producing my own music, and I would play everything on the record. Like I play everything on my record.
Yeah, because that would make sense, because I would kind of imagine. Yeah, I mean that would make sense to me, because I would kind of imagine, unless you're really a stinky singer, that you'd have the ability to go in the studio more, let's say, and if you're writing the tunes, kind of singing your own material, more heartfelt, as opposed to. You might be a little more critical. You hire another, let's say, lead singer to sing your tunes. You might be telling the guy, you know what? No, that's not how I pictured the song, or that's not how I heard it in my head. Whereas you can just kind of go in there and do it the way you envisioned it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find that by doing that, the song really comes across.
More heartfelt, yeah.
On a melody level, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and talking about background vocals, Pat, some of my favorite bands, you take a band like Van Halen, and one of the, especially Michael Anthony, he was the background sound of that band, he really came through on those songs, and the background vocals and all those great Van Halen tunes, that was a big part.
All the way, man.
Yeah.
People don't realize it, but I know it. Because that's what hooked, obviously Eddie's guitar playing and the songwriting, and
it's the whole package. Yeah.
Michael Anthony's backing vocals were the biggest part of the hooks in the chorus.
Yeah, another great example of that. One of my all-time favorite bands from the '80s, Rat. If you listen to those Rat tunes, they got really catchy hooks. And say what you will about Stephen Pearcy as a lead singer, but he is the voice of that band. And then the other guys that would be the background sound, but that background sound of Rat, man, it was a big part of what made those songs.
Huge.
Yeah.
Those harmonies were huge, man.
Yeah.
Totally, man. I really that's kind of my when I write lead vocal and backing vocals in it. It's kind of the way I'm built. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's probably like you, Pat. I'm a song guy. Even when I'm listening to music, like I said, you could have a band of 5, just the hottest looking guys, but if you don't have any song, if the songs aren't that great, the band's not gonna go too far, just because you have 5 great looking guys in the band. It's got to be about the songs, and that's why I loved a lot of those '80s bands, because I miss the days when they had bands, that had guitar heroes like Warren DeMartini, and guys like that.
Yeah, totally.
Randy Rhoads, Eddie Van Halen, and talking a little bit about Eddie Van Halen, an amazing thing. That guy is a guitar god, but yet when you come and find out he can't read a lick of music, it just amazes you what he can do with the guitar.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to read it, because I don't read music either, so I know exactly where he comes from. He hears it. He probably hears it faster than you can read it.
And it stuff like that amazes me, because you could be the most technically precise, gifted player, but you might not have the same kind of raw feel as a guy like Eddie Van Halen has to his music.
I totally agree. I don't know. I can read, but
yeah.
I'm not a fluent player. I'm more of a, for my ear type player. But I respect all levels. But you exactly. I totally agree with you 1,000%. You could have a guy who can read and have his feel, and a guy that can't read a lick of music and could, most of the time dance circles around people because it's feel. You got to feel it.
Oh yeah.
Notes are notes unless you feel them.
Yeah.
And when you feel them, people feel them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than that, it's virtuosity. There's a lot of guys that can do that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, Pat, I really enjoyed talking to you. Before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to say to all your fans out there listening to this?
I just would like to say thank you for your support, for all your years of support, and thank you so much for being on board with 4x8. And we look forward to coming to your town, to your city, and playing for you, and meeting you, and shaking some hands, and having some fun, and look for us in 2017. We will
definitely do that, and
our website,
yeah,
and stay in the loop, and you'll be hearing from us.
Okay, we will definitely be doing that. And before I let you go, Pat, thanks so much for agreeing to be part of our Destroyer 40 special here. I really enjoyed getting a chance to talk to you, know a little bit more about you. Be it 4x8 or any of your other projects, anytime you want to do this again, if you had as much fun as I did tonight, just feel free to reach out to me and be more than happy to promote any of your projects you have going on.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed speaking to you, and good luck with all your ventures. And I commend you for being so passionate about supporting and bringing music to people. I really respect that because
well,
guys like you that help facilitate guys like us. And I have the utmost respect for you guys.
I appreciate.
You know how much blood and sweat and effort and real heart goes into making music, and it's people like you that help spread the word to our music, and it means a lot. Well,
that's what we do it for, and I appreciate you saying that because, but then again, if you guys want to put out the great music like you are, there'd be nothing to promote. But I do feel that I'd much rather spread the word and promote word about great new bands like 4x8 than get in on my little soapbox and trashing some band that I don't really believe in. I'd rather spread the word about the music I love, and because even the worst band out there, I got a ton of respect for the fact that Pat, you're talking to a guy here I can't even play musical notes. So any guy that can go in the studio and do what you do or get up on stage, I have all the respect in the world for you guys.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay, well,
I have the utmost respect for you as well.
Well, thanks so much, buddy, for saying that. And I'll let you know the minute this interview gets posted. And at that point, you're more than welcome to post on any of your websites. But thanks so much for being part of this, and I'll be in touch.
Yes, thank you, Jason. Have a great evening, and spread the faith, 4x8.
We'll do that, my friend. Take care. Bye-bye.